We just wanted to welcome you to another episode of the Imperfect show. And this is where Jeremy and I just talk about kind of life things and different things to do with family and relationships. And so this week we're going to talk about a topic that I feel like we have dealt with quite a bit, maybe try to learn about quite a bit as we've gotten older, especially in different areas of ministry that we've been involved in, but just in life in general. And we wanted to talk about leadership, and more importantly, maybe just the topic of accessible leadership is kind of what we've said. We wanted to do it because it is accessible to everyone, and leadership applies to everyone, no matter what your role in life is, no matter where what your life stage is in right now, and what your job is, or just kind of where you find yourself in life. It applies to everyone, and everyone has to be a leader in some form, in some way. And so that's why we said accessible leadership, because this is something that is accessible to everyone, that everyone needs to know how to lead in the right way. Right. And so we just kind of wanted to talk about that this week.
Yeah, I think this is an important conversation, particularly with the audience that we would normally work with. And, we're broadcasting live on Facebook. So a lot of the folks who would watch us on Facebook follow us because of the Mighty Oaks Foundation and come from perhaps a military background. It's always interesting when speaking about leadership to people who have a military background, because we all feel like we have leadership figured out. We all know what we believe leadership is. And I think most of us believe that leadership includes a particular style, that leadership is getting out in front, it's carrying people forward, it's moving them along. And in order to do that, you have to have the big personality, and you have to be able to really kind of do that, follow me, we're going over there. The problem with that, if that's your model of leadership in your mind, is that you're not able to translate that into regular life. You're a husband, you're a wife, you're, whatever your roles are in life. You have a job that's not in the military, you don't wear a uniform for this job. Whatever your role is, if leadership to you is about being the loudest person in the room or the most charismatic person in the room, then you're probably going to struggle. Because leadership is not something reserved for people that are type A. Leadership, I really believe, and we talked about this, leadership is something we have all been created with, the ability to lead. We're all leaders, even though we don't feel like it. And so the question really is, if all of us are leaders, and we could spend a whole episode talking about why I believe that and why I think that, but if all of us are leaders, if all of us do lead, then how do we reach out and grab that if we're not someone who is that type A personality? How do we do that? And so this is an important conversation for us. I think one that is hopefully very helpful. Yeah,
and we've kind of talked about this before if you've watched any of the other episodes of this show, that I feel like that, like what Jeremy said, not to, we often look at people that are the loudest, that are the most, maybe have more of those extroverted personalities. And we look at those people and we're like, okay, well, they're natural leaders. When in fact, those might be the very people that don't really have leadership figured out. And people would not be as willing to follow someone like that, as opposed to someone who has that same kind of personality, but does have leadership figured out and is able to lead in an effective way. And so we have very different personalities,
Jeremy personalities.
We're probably as opposite of people as you can, which I don't know, is great in some ways and sometimes not. But, someone like me who's naturally more introverted, maybe a little more shy, I'm not the loudest person in the room. I'm not the one that's going to jump up first and say, hey, let's go do this. Someone like myself can really discredit the fact that maybe I do have some leadership qualities. Maybe I can be an effective leader. And so that's kind of an example of that, I guess, would be, we're looking at the person that, and you're not either the loudest person in the room, all the time, but you are someone that's a little more outgoing, a little more willing to, get up and talk and all that than I would be. And so that would kind of be an example of maybe not discrediting maybe your personality, or as whether or not you're comfortable getting up in front of people and talking, or being that person to stand up and say, we're going to do this thing.
So leadership is for everyone, but in order for it to be accessible, we have to start with the definition. And this is something that I've spent a great deal of time talking about. I teach on this. I've written about it, and the definition of leadership. What were you going to say?
You've written about it.
I've written about it.
So Jeremy has written a book about leadership.
I wrote a book on leadership.
Leadership by Design. And it was actually, and I'm not just saying this because you're sitting here, but I've told people this before, that it's been one of my favorite books that I've read on leadership. And
it's hard to get your wife to say anything that you did is your favorite. So.
When I read it, and Jeremy let me read kind of the manuscript as he was writing it, and it just really helped me so much to be able to not identify, but really define what leadership should actually be. And so that is a really great kind of view of leadership, a really great definition, and I thought you did a really good job.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So.
Thank you for the commercial. Yeah, so I wrote a book on leadership. You just heard the commercial. But the premise of it all has to be based on a clear definition, and I think this is where most of us miss it. Our definition is tied to our experience or, again, a personality type or something like that. So I'll give you my definition, and for time, I won't stay here a long time. But if all you get out of this is this definition, then you can spend the next couple of days trying to figure out how that works in your context. But the way that I understand leadership, and looking at the Bible and examples in the Bible, believing that we were created to lead, looking at leadership that I've been exposed to in the military and in other places, I really believe that leadership boils down to something very basic, very fundamental, something that we can all get a hold of. Leadership is taking people, the people in your life, whoever those people are. Leadership is taking people from where they are right now to where they really need to be. So I'll say it again, and I'll say it slowly. Again, I've taught this to military leaders. In a lot of ways, it kind of flips the idea of leadership upside down. But leadership simply, foundationally, you can say philosophically if you want to, the starting point of leadership is this. Leadership is taking the people in your life. Those could be your children. They could be the people that you work with, the people that you lead, the people that you manage. Leadership is taking those people, whoever those people are in your life, from where they are right now, to where they need to be. I struggled with a clear definition of leadership for a lot of years, and there are different applications of leadership. There are techniques that can be used to lead. There are so many contextual kind of ideas around leadership. So many good things have been written about leadership, but I really struggled in my heart to understand what is leadership. Fundamentally, what is leadership? The leader is the person in the organization, in the family, in the church, in the whatever. The leader is the person who can look at someone else and say, I know where you are, I get it. It's not necessarily bad or good. This is where you are, but that's where you need to be. Let me use my resources. Let me use my opportunities. Let me leverage what I have to help you move from where you are to where you need to be. And again, I think that applies in a military setting, that applies in a corporate setting, that applies in a family setting, but that has to be the baseline for leadership. One of the things people are always interested in when they hear that definition is, well, how does that apply in my home? And that's not the only place, but how does that apply in my home? How does that apply with my kids? And I'll let you talk about that, but it's, again, for those of you that don't necessarily know us, we have 4 kids. We have a 20-year-old, a 19-year-old. Susanne does not look old enough to have a 20 and a 19-year-old,
okay.
But she is. She's much older than she looks.
Okay.
19-year-old, or a 20-year-old, a 19-year-old, and then a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old. So we kind of have the gambit of life stages, and trying to apply this leadership principle to all of those is possible, but it is difficult. So talk about that a little bit. Taking your kids from where they are to where they need to be. How do we apply this model of leadership in our homes?
I think really this model of leadership is also founded in, and I know you spent a great deal of time studying it, but in Scripture. And so when we look at that and when we think about, okay, well, how do I know where those people need to be? Well, how I know where my children need to be is because I spend a great deal of time praying for them, but also praying how that God would give me wisdom to know what is best for them, to know how to counsel them, to know how to help them, to know how to show them where they should be, how they get from here to there. And so for one, it would be a lot of prayer and a lot of knowing, asking God, show me how to have this conversation and give me wisdom in this area of life. And we've just helped our oldest daughter make a college decision. She's been living at home for the last couple of years, getting her associate's degree at a junior college by us. And now she's trying to make the decision of where I want to go to school somewhere to get my bachelor's degree. And it was a really agonizing decision for her. Yeah. And so for us to be able to speak into her life in that way, in that area of her life, instead of just telling her like, this is where we think you should go. This is a decision she has to make for herself.
Right.
But she has to know what God's plan is for her life, and she has to know this is the next step I need to take in that area. And so for us to be able to help her and lead her through that decision would be for us to know, okay, this is where you are right now. Let us help you know how to get to this place. Really requires a lot of prayer and a lot of asking God for wisdom in that. But also, not just that, not just praying and asking God to help you, but also making it about that person. And I think that's a really key thing, especially when you're talking about your kids. It doesn't have anything to do with you, or it's about what is best for the other person, not what's best for you, not what you want for them, not what you want them to do, but what is best for them. And so you're making it more about them than you're making it about you. And a lot of parenting, a lot of leading, a lot of especially leading your kids is very uncomfortable, is very putting yourself aside and making it about them and what is best for them, not what's best for you. We could have told our daughter, you know what, we want you to stay home. We want you to live at home. We want you to, because that's what we want. You know, we don't want her to leave. We don't want her to move out. We don't want her to go somewhere far away. And so what we could have done in that situation said, okay, we want you to, this is where we want you to go because it's close to home. It's, you know, you'll still be around, but maybe that's not what's best for her. That's what we want her to do. And so that's just an example, you know, but I feel like the two things that are most important when you're leading your kids, and especially following that principle and that definition that you gave, is okay, here we are right now, and how do we get you to where you need to be? Well, knowing where they need to be is asking God for wisdom, praying for them, praying that God would show them what He would have for them to do, and giving you wisdom and knowing how to counsel them through that and how to help them through that. But then also putting them above yourself and putting what's best for them above what you want, what's best for you. Maybe, and those would be the two things that come to mind when I think about your kids and doing what's best in that area.
I think the part about being selfless or being focused on the children, on your children, is the key to leadership. So if leadership is taking people from where they are right now to where they need to be, the one thing missing in that equation is you. It has nothing to do with you. It's not about what you want or what you think or what you feel or what you would like to see. Leadership really is about understanding where they are and then leveraging whatever it is that you have in a selfless way to help them get to where they need to be. There's a phrase that's sometimes used, servant leadership. In the church world, there's a phrase, spiritual leadership. And both of those are hard to nail down, but I think they boil down to this idea that if I'm leading you, what I'm trying to do is help you move from a place that you're in right now, which may be good, to the place that's best. And that then is, you know, as you just mentioned, helping your kids move along that line. And along with that, and this is what's, you know, was really a struggle in parenting, I believe, is that your kids won't always want to go to the place or need to go to the place where we want them to be, right? That can be a challenge. Now, sometimes they'll want to go to a place that's harmful for them or hurtful for them. This is not about getting them to wherever it is they want to be, but it's about helping them understand this is where you really should be. This is how you're gifted. These are the opportunities that you have. This is what you're passionate about, and digging through that and helping them to understand that. But it's very individual. Yeah,
it's not really, and you pointing that out, I think kind of shows that it's not, the conversation changes with age.
It changes with age,
and we kind of have talked about this before when we did an episode about kind of parenting, is it does kind of change with age. So the conversation we're having with a 20-year-old is much different than the conversation you're having with a 10-year-old as it pertains to leadership in this way. The way that you're leading a 10-year-old looks a lot different than the way that you're leading a 20-year-old making a college decision. You know, the way you're leading a 10-year-old looks much different. There's a lot more, you know, rights and wrongs, and this is do's and don'ts, and you know, all those things. But I think even for a 10-year-old, they're able to watch you and the way that you live your life and the way that you conduct yourself and the way that you lead other people and the way that you, I think especially for a dad or a husband, the way that you're leading the family, they're able to look at that and kind of really get a good idea of leadership and what they're willing to follow. And for a 10-year-old, I feel like it's also a lot more cut and dry of where you are now, where you need to go, rather than for a 20-year-old where it's really more about them starting to learn how to make their own decisions in bigger areas of life.
Yeah, for a little kid, it's where you are right now is standing in front of me and you're dirty. Where you need to be is getting a bath and going to bed.
Yes. Yeah.
So
there's not so much asking God for wisdom.
there's not asking for God for wisdom.
Yeah.
It's helping them go from where they are to where they
Yes.
need to be.
Yep.
As a parent, we want our kids to behave when we're out in public. So this is where the motivation for it. Is it leadership or is it management, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm leading my kids, I want to teach them how to behave, how to control themselves, and how to go out in public and be a part of what's happening in our community, because that's what's best for them. That's where they need to be, and that will equip them to do other things later on. Sometimes selfish leadership, or just managing the people around us, comes down to, I want them to behave so they don't embarrass me. Mm-hmm. That's a different motivation. The motivation should be, this is where you are. I don't know where you're going to end up in a job or in a career or a relationship, but I know that someday you're going to have to go out and do something important. Mm-hmm. And for that, you're going to have some basic skills. So what I'm going to do is use my resources, my opportunities, the things that I have available to me to help get you from where you are, learning and growing and developing, to where you need to be, ready to go out into the world. And then that conversation gets more specific as your kids get older and you start to actually talk about locations. Mm-hmm. So we could talk about family, but there's another application, and that's in the business world. I use business very loosely, the place that you work. And perhaps you're a leader in the place that you work. Maybe you're not the leader. It doesn't say leader next to your name on your business card, but you're working in that organization. Leadership is still, even in a place where you're there to make money, leadership is still helping people move from where they are to where they need to be. And just a kind of a side note, there's a difference between management and leadership. And this is always someone throws this at me. Well, what about managers? Managers are wonderful. We need managers. Managers move people and things from one place to another. They keep the wheels rolling. They make things happen. Managers are very important. But leadership is preferred, in my opinion. They're not fighting against each other. You have to have both. Leadership is preferred. But even as the leader in an organization or a department or wherever it is that you work, the goal is still to help the people that you lead go from where they are to where they need to be. Maybe where they are is new. Where they need to be is trained so they can do their job. Invest in them to get them there. Maybe where they are is doing an incredible job, you don't want to lose them, but where they really need to be is management in another department. Leverage what you have to get them where they need to be. And on, you can think all the way through this. But the pushback on this idea in a business setting is, well, if I'm helping the people that I lead get from where they are to where they need to be, where does that leave me as a leader? I'll tell you where it leaves you as a leader. It leaves you in a place where you have people working with you and for you that are happy about working with you and for you. It creates an environment around you where people in other departments and other areas of the company want to come work with you, where people will give their best to you because they understand that your focus, your goal is to help them move from where they are to where they need to be. Now, this is all in the context of the company. We go to jobs to make money. This is crazy conversations we have, right? We go to jobs to make money. People employ you to help them make money. But the best way to do that and the best way to motivate your employees and get them to do the things that you hired them to do is to take care of them, to invest in them, and really move them wherever they are, from where they are to where they need to be. And I think that can be extremely powerful and extremely helpful.
I think when you're looking at an organization or a company, people are much more willing to be led by someone who is not trying to strong arm them. Like you said, the difference between management and leadership. You're not trying to just get people to do what you want them to do or what you know that needs to be done to get the job done. Leading people looks very much like, you said servant leadership, but kindness and graciousness and truly caring for them, putting them before yourself. You're not having them do this or leading them in this way or trying to get to this place because it'll make you look good. It's not about, and I think that's what's so important. A lot of people miss this, that it's not about you. It's not about you getting these people to get to this point. It's not about you saying, okay, here you are now, we need to get here, and dragging people along the way. It's truly leading them in such a way that they, like Jeremy said, will want to help you and want to follow you and want to do these things, and they'll be excited to be a part of something that you're leading because of the way that you have led. And so getting people from where they are to where they need to be is not strong arming. It's not making them do this thing. It's just with kindness and graciousness and selflessness, serving them in such a way, leading them in such a way that they will kind of on their own, get to this place. And it will look like, oh, wow, like, I did this on my own.
Right.
I think that's kind of what it looks like. But in reality, it's because you have led in such a way that they are, willing to follow this process to get to this place. And so I think that's what a lot of people in leadership positions might miss, is that it's not about getting people to, the only word that comes to mind is like strong arming, because you think about these people that are like dragging these people behind them.
Or to manipulate them or use
using
them.
manipulation,
Use them,
using words like, I need you to do this, or I need you, instead of, and we talked about like the language of leadership before, and I think that is so, so important. The kind of words that you use to lead people in this way, it's not about it's not about me, it's about, we are accomplishing this, we are doing this thing. Think about where we are going to be. And so I think using words that are kind of all encompassing of the group that you're leading, there's a whole language to leadership too, I feel like. And so that kind of reflects this concept of, taking people from where they are to where they need to be with kindness and graciousness and gentleness and truly caring about the people that you're leading more than this place where you're going to end up, or more than the goal. It's all about the people. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and it feels upside down because you say, well, I'm in charge, I'm the leader because I need them to do things. Again, management is making people do things. It's utilizing things like disciplinary actions and financial motivations and those things to get people to do things because I need them to do things. And at the end of the day, you hire people to do things. Yeah. But the higher calling is leadership. If you can lead by investing in people, helping them to move to the place they need to be, that's the higher calling. Now, there are some people that just don't want to be led, right? So again, back to the children.
Yeah.
Sometimes your kids don't want to be led. They don't want one more lecture on how brushing their teeth every day is going to make them a better adult someday. And they'll push back and they'll say, I don't care. Well, they still need to brush their teeth. That's when you move from leadership to management.
Yeah.
And it's that way in a business too. There are times where people just don't want to be led. They won't do anything. It doesn't matter how much you pour into them. You've hired them to do a job and you need to manage them. But the higher calling, when it's possible, is leadership, is moving people along. And it's amazing how when you lift other people up, it lifts you up as well. And again, it's not manipulation. Yeah. But it's selfless service and it's humble. This is, again, a very important thing. You talk about the language of leadership.
Yeah.
It's humility as well. I've led wrong a lot of times in my life. And I've led for the wrong motivations and with the wrong intent in mind. The type of leadership that we're talking about right now is not perfect. It's imperfect, just like the title of the show, right? Yeah. It's imperfect. And it's messy sometimes and you get it wrong sometimes. But when you lead to help others, it allows you to have a humble attitude toward others so that when you mess up, when you do it wrong, when you get it, you're off a little bit, whatever, you can go to them and say, look, I'm sorry, that was not the intention. I'm trying to help. I'm trying to, whatever the situation is. Yeah. And you can continue to lead. And by the way, that's not weak. That's not weak leadership. It's honest leadership. Yeah. Because in the back pocket, you always have management, right? Yeah. And you have to understand when you've crossed the line. If you've made a mistake, apologize for it, be humble, continue to serve. If people aren't responding and you need to get them to do a job, then get them to do the job.
Really, I think when you lead that way, people are much more willing to kind of be gracious towards you when you have a bad day or when maybe you don't get something, perfectly right. And if you apologize to them, it's kind of like, oh, you don't have anything to apologize for. Like, I don't see. And so I feel like it kind of goes both ways. When you're leading in this way, I feel like the response to you is much more, you get that in return, like that graciousness and that kindness and people being like, oh, like when you are, like you said, honest in that way. And so I feel like the return from that also is that the way that you have treated them, they're going to treat you that way in return. Yeah. Where if you are more of that, like, I'm going to make you do this, you're going to do this because I'm telling you, because we need to do this thing, you're going to do this, then it's a lot more, I think you'll find a lot more pushback from people when maybe you make a mistake or you have to apologize. It'll be a lot harder for them to accept that apology. Yeah. And I think you said that it will lift you up as well. And I think, when you said that the goal, what should be the goal. I think when you said it'll lift you up as well, I think you meant more like encouraging. It'll encourage you to see other people, doing that.
It encourages you, but I do think that, sometimes when people say, well, if I lead, then I won't get promoted. I won't get the raise. I won't get the whatever. I think when you focus on people and you lift them up, they will do a better job, and that will put you in a position where you are getting the raise and you are getting the thing. Again, you're encouraged by that, but I don't think that advancing in my career and leading in a servant way are in conflict, and yet a lot of people do, and I think employees see that as well.
And so it kind of goes both ways. Like when you're leading people in this way, it will lift them up, but then it will also not only encourage you, but help you as well.
That's right. So if this is our definition of leadership, and we see it applied in the home, we can see it applied in a business, you can think about this in your own context. There are thousands probably of contexts this would have to be applied, and you're going to have to think through that. But if this is what it is, if leadership is using what you have, the resources, the opportunities, the time, the influence, whatever you have, to help people really grow, to help people get better, to help people be more equipped to do the job we're asking them to do, to move further in their careers than they would otherwise, to grow, to move from where they are to where they need to be. If that's the definition we're using, that's what we're operating on, then back to the original statement that was made as we started, anyone can lead. It is accessible because you don't need to have the right personality. You don't need to be the loudest person in the room. You don't need to have the title. If you want to advance in your job, learn how to lead, even though leadership or leader is not on your placard or your business card. Leadership is saying, my boss, this is where they are. They've got all these goals, these things that have come down from higher. They have to do this because corporate wants them to. That's where they are. Well, where they need to be is having that stuff accomplished and doing a good job. And so I'm going to lead. I'm not in charge, but I'm going to lead. I'm going to help my boss go from where they are to where they need to be. I'm going to support them and help them through that. This definition of leadership carries out in every single area of life if, number one, you understand it, and number two, you're willing to apply it, and number three, you realize that this is everybody. You can be a 6-year-old kid out on the playground who's helping other kids. You can be the CEO of a company. You can be the CO of a military unit. It doesn't matter. Leadership is this thing we've mysticized so much that it's out there. We can't understand it. It's so hard to put a definition on. It's only accessible to some people. You're a leader, whether you accept that or not. The question is, what are you doing to leverage what you have for the benefit of others? And if you'll learn that and understand that, it really can change your relationships, change your outlook, change how you feel about where you are, and put you in a position where people want to be around you and want to learn from you, and they understand that what you're doing is with their best interest in mind.
I've heard it said before that leadership is a really lonely position, and I think that's true in a lot of ways because there's some things that you have to be willing to set aside, some things that you have to be willing to do if you are going to be leading in your life. But I don't think it necessarily has to be lonely in the sense that you're standing there all by yourself. I think that it can be lonely because, like I said, but at the same time, I feel like that you'll have a group of people around you that are willing to come around you and help you and be led. And I feel like it doesn't have to be lonely in the sense that I've heard it described before.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a lonely journey if you're taking people with you. And I think leadership is lonely when you're closing the door behind you, right?
Yep.
And again, there are different ways of doing this. The tactics, techniques, and procedures, as we said in the Marine Corps, those are important. There's different ways to lead. There are different skills that need to be utilized to lead in specific environments. All of those things are important. But at the end of the day, leadership is just serving others. It's saying, look, this is where you are, but I really believe you could be over there, or that's where you want to go. Let's start moving together. And I'm going to walk this path with you, and we're going to get there. Leadership is not challenging, or is not the challenge that we make it. It is challenging, extremely difficult. It's not the challenge we make it if we have a good definition that allows us to move forward.
Yeah, that's a good starting point.
It's a good starting point. I hope that's a help to you. There are, again, so many areas you need to lead, but I think starting there is a good one. Appreciate you guys watching. Hope that was a help to you. Again, so much we could talk about in relationship to leadership. And maybe we'll do this again, a part 2 or something. But
I feel like we keep saying that. Like,
yeah, we've got a lot of part 2s.
Big topics.
A lot of part 2s.
Part 2. So we'll do
another one. But thank you for watching. If you found value in this, and I trust that you did, please subscribe if you have not yet to the YouTube channel. Hit the notification bell. That lets you know when more stuff comes online. We'd love to share that with you, and share it out with other people. Let them get a hold of it. This is one of those topics specifically, I believe, that warrants hearing and then thinking about it and kind of chewing on it a little bit. And we'd love to get that out. So thank you.
Thank you.